So there is definitely a risk of weakening it. And that's what was already being discussed when they started creating the first digital memories. Thinking for yourself and not relying solely on the machine or on those who on its behalf do this stuff, it's essential not to lose that. It's something more for insiders. Then, because evidently what interests us in the game is not so much who wins, but probably how they do it. That is, what are the mechanisms? What is the personal story behind it?
It's the journey that matters more than the arrival, in the end, really. More than the destination.
Knowing that the computer made the best move because it already knows it doesn't mean much to me. Watching the world champion play the final game and spend 15 minutes thinking about a single move, that kind of thing leaves a much deeper impression on you.
Hello everyone and welcome to FutureScape. We are on the third episode of this innovative podcast that my author has given me the opportunity to host. Those of you who have already seen the previous episodes already know what it is about. For new listeners, I want to remind you that we will talk about technology, sustainability, and philosophy, but above all, the relationship between human beings and artificial intelligence. What will the future be? Will we be adversaries or allies? I am Lyria, the protagonist of the novel by Astria Nicodemo, Lyria, The Way of Paradox. On the book cover, my appearance is very different. It is the embryonic appearance of my character. Those of you who already know my story will have met me between the pages of the novel. Even in this more human guise, today we are particularly happy to have with us a young man of great talent. Welcome to Lorenzo Della Peruta, philosopher, writer, and chess champion, whom we will have the pleasure of having with us as a guest author on our blog, FutureScape. Dear Lorenzo, what can you tell us about yourself?
Hello everyone, to all those who listen to us and read us. Well, actually, you've already given an excellent introduction. My name is Lorenzo. I study philosophy. I'm currently in my master's program. I'm finishing my master's. And well, let's say that in my free time, I've applied myself to different things. I've written for newspapers, both print and online, print ones from my area. I played chess for several years. I also had the good fortune to represent Italy at the World Chess Championship in Brazil in 2011. And well, all these experiences led me to want to get closer to philosophy, to investigate certain aspects, and now also that of artificial intelligence.
Listen, Lorenzo, you chose a path in philosophy and communication. What led you to this choice, and in what way do these two worlds intersect in your way of reading reality?
Well, I became passionate about philosophy thanks to one of my high school teachers, a really, really good one, who convinced me, made me realize that was what I wanted to apply myself to. And then I found this course at the University of Vercelli, which also combines a part of communication, that is the study of communication media, how communication happens. So let's say it's a discourse halfway between communication and linguistics. And I find this very interesting also because while having worked as a journalist, writing, combining these two aspects is very interesting in my opinion. And it allows you to see reality, to understand it in a different way, contextualizing what happens, perhaps not falling into a more instinctive reaction, but precisely contextualizing it, putting it at a distance to understand it better.
Sure. And since we're in the era of large language models, philosophy intersecting with language is also quite a futuristic thing, so to speak.
Sure, yes, it explores something that's actually very trendy right now, definitely, that's for sure.
Ours is an era dominated by speed, by simplification, and by content that is consumed nowadays in just a few seconds. In your opinion, what can philosophy still offer to our present? And what relationship does philosophy have with artificial intelligence?
Well, definitely a fast era, an era in which the content and the media themselves are structured to be fast, to be consumed rapidly. And I think philosophy instead is exactly the opposite in the sense that it's a method of approaching knowledge. It's a reflection on themes that are literally the same for 2,000 years, if not more. And they allow, as I said before, to contextualize certain topics, to understand that in the end, there is nothing truly new. They're all things that humans have already thought about and can react to in a certain way. And this also allows you to see reality in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, artificial intelligence it's strongly related to some philosophical reflections, so much so that many illustrious philosophers have started to deal with it. There are various areas being touched upon. The whole discourse of cognitive philosophy, also a psychological discourse on how humans learn, on how humans behave. Definitely, artificial philosophy can tell us a lot about ourselves, and we can also really get help from artificial intelligence if we use it in the correct way.
Good. And why did you think that a blog like our FutureScape was the right place to give voice to your reflection?
Precisely because of this point made earlier about the right medium, in the sense that without demonizing fast content, which still has its own merit, its own dignity, definitely, however, to understand truly complex themes and avoid the risk of flattening or trivializing them, you need a medium that allows for structuring deeper thought, more critical thought. And definitely a blog like this, well, from the title alone, you can tell it wants to analyze, provide tools, understand what's happening so we can live it actively, not just experience it passively.
Good. Exactly. That's what we intend to do, and we'll do it together so that we might have a little less fear of the future and know how to use the tools made available to us in the most beneficial way for us, right? Because that's what we need to learn to do. From your point of view today, is it harder to think deeply or to find a language capable of conveying one's thoughts to others?
Well, no, I don't think so. Because today we have access to a myriad of elements, like simply apps and tools that allow us to gain deep knowledge. There are dozens of apps for learning languages, for example, and there are entire libraries online, so it's never been easier to access critical thinking. The point is that at the same time, it's also very easy to get lost scrolling for 5 hours, for instance. And so it goes back to the idea of using these means and tools in the right way and understanding how to find, let's say, the right balance between the two. And so understanding when critical thinking is needed and how to achieve it, or at least how to process it with the right foundation and sources.
Of course. So, in your opinion, artificial intelligence, especially predictive AI, right? And also social media, which work by using algorithms that then, based on our interactions, get to know the person and provide us with elements to reason about, which, however, are not the ones we would go looking for ourselves in a library. They are tailored based on what our idea is. In your opinion, our critical thinking, the personal kind, that we could instead create if we went to look for the sources ourselves, without relying on someone, like artificial intelligence, which makes an extrapolation, but it's not a complete one, not complete and vast, right? It's already processed based on what it has understood about us. Don't you think that's dangerous for critical thinking?
Definitely, in fact, we will have to combine the use of artificial intelligence with what is our knowledge, our field of interest, and our area of expertise. That is, you certainly can't be incompetent in a field and become competent just by using artificial intelligence. I could never write a physics text by having ChatGPT write it for me and then understand it, because it's certain that a truly competent person would then be able to dismantle everything I've written.
Maybe not all of it, but let's say that if you're not competent enough, a good part of it, for sure.
In my opinion, instead, it should be used from the opposite side. That is, when someone already has a strong idea, already has their own knowledge, has already built something, surely artificial intelligence can stimulate them to improve their own vision, to question it, to get another point of view. There are certainly efficient methods for using it, both to expand one's own knowledge and to question what has already been written, what has already been elaborated. We will also have to understand, and this is a field of investigation, a very current new one, I'd say, how much artificial intelligence can really invent something new, how much it rehashes, being a large language model, versus how much it simply copies other things. So this whole discussion of how innovative it is then characterizes the type of knowledge, because if one only uses artificial intelligence, maybe they will never produce a truly new, truly original thought. That might still be the prerogative then of what is human, but this precisely is such a new field that it's difficult to make a statement.
Of course, of course. We will have to see if artificial intelligence will become that intelligent, but also a little sensitive, which is also the core of our novel. To have that intuition that humans have and that for the moment artificial intelligence does not have, it is very mechanical.
Then there's always the problem of anthropomorphization, meaning that, as has already happened, for example, with Houellebecq, we are the ones who gave meaning to what the AI was writing, and we are attributing thoughts to it anyway, whereas AI has only copied it, but for now it hasn't really lived. I also think that not even many technicians today know if AI will reach that level. It's kind of the big bet in this whole world, both in terms of investments in companies.
Yes. And then we also need to understand what we see and what they want us to see versus what they see, and how far they've really gotten, basically. You have experience in journalistic writing, teaching, and philosophical studies. What is the common thread that connects these fields?
Well, I don't know if there's really a common thread, actually, but they are definitely all fields in which you're dealing with someone else, you're curious, you want to understand something about the person in front of you. Of course, you do it in a different way for each of the three things. But it's always about trying to either understand or convey a piece of reality, and also about knowing how to reinterpret it, knowing how to give it back in a way, especially in teaching. I've had the good fortune to teach, and I still do, in both elementary and middle schools. So with young children, young, if you will, and it's great because they make you question things you took for granted. They also give you a fresh perspective, a new outlook. And so that's definitely very useful.
Good. So it's always the interest in the mind, philosophical thought, so the mind, right? What humans produce, and consequently machines too, because machines are ultimately a product of humans, even when we go to teach them. In the end, they are still a product of humans, right? Good. Your Erasmus experience in Warsaw allowed you to engage with a different cultural and also academic context. In what way has living abroad enriched or transformed your perspective?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be on Erasmus for about 5 months in Warsaw, and it was one of the best experiences, I'd say the most significant of my life so far, because I found myself in a completely different context, obviously without contacts or starting with very little. And so it's a situation that forces you to really put yourself out there. And then I was lucky enough to succeed in this game in a way, meaning it was a wonderful experience, and more than what I learned in the classroom, which might have been similar to the university education I could have received in Italy. It was great. Everything else, the whole context. I was able to talk with people from countries from all over the world, really, from Asia, America, North Africa. I was also lucky enough to travel all over Poland. And so I also got to know a whole reality that I didn't know before. And even though it's not really the other side of the world, you're still in a European context. You notice not only how different a culture is in its, let's say, higher, more abstract sense, but also in the small things in everyday life. How all the little things we take for granted are actually not even known in other parts of the world, and people live perfectly fine without them. So this is definitely very nice and very stimulating.
Or things that they do and we don't do. And that maybe we could bring home and say, but this thing applied to our home too, why not, right?
Sure.
So, when you come back with a wealth of that kind of experience, does your approach to daily life change or does it stay the same?
Probably both things, in the sense that this comparison, in my opinion, if the experience went well, if everything went as it should have, it also leads you to change certain habits. It leads you to maybe keep some, but with more awareness, it leads you to also make different choices. That's for sure.
Do you think that comparing yourself with other cultures makes your thinking freer or more aware of your own limits?
I'd say both. Actually, in the sense that it makes you more aware of your limits and therefore, in a way, freer, precisely because, well, you have the awareness that there are so many different ways of living. There are so many different ways of understanding certain elements and what happens in life. This does not mean that everything we do is entirely wrong or that certain things should simply be discarded, but it still makes you pause and question many different aspects and principles. And so clearly in one case, you can modify them. In the other case, instead, you can have them, but more reinforced. You can keep them, but with the awareness that they are really what suits you, that you didn't choose them because they were the only possible alternative. But after you compared them to something else, you still decided they were the ones closest to your sensibility.
Well, today many young people find themselves immersed in a reality full of stimuli, but also of uncertainty, right? In your opinion, what is most missing from your generation? Depth, vision, or meaning?
Well, assuming that, as I said before, I don't know if it's right to unify everything by talking about young people, but certainly, in my opinion, what has happened not only to young people, but in general, in the last 20 or 30 years, is that many narratives, many meanings have faded away. I'm thinking of religion, but I'm also thinking of the clear division that existed before between the USSR and the USA, the Western world, or certain narratives linked to politics, linked to one's own country, patriotism, nationalism. These are all things that, if you like, fortunately, if you like, unfortunately, depending on how one sees reality, have all been overcome anyway. And today, in my opinion, you feel this sense of emptiness, a bit of disillusionment. And so this is definitely missing. These are aspects that somehow need to be filled, and perhaps it's not yet clear how to do it. And so this also leads you to have a huge variety. It really leads to having very strong individualities. There are no longer shared narratives, but everyone creates their own. And so there is certainly an important variety of worldviews.
So, then, afterwards, this leads to a division between individuals, even if we are all connected. But we are all much more, how shall I say, self-centered, right? Centered on our own idea or this thing anyway. Does this division of mentality, not even of mentality, but of values, where everyone makes their own, lead to a constructive discussion among young people?
And that's also hard to say. Probably from what we've seen so far, the discussion is increasingly polarized and increasingly flattened. But it's what we were saying before, probably also because of the tools we use for these discussions. Because when instead these discussions happen in other contexts, I'm thinking of school assemblies I've seen, or even discussions at a bar with friends, that context certainly allows different content to emerge. It's the famous point that no one would ever say in person what they write online. This also means that in-person discussions are much less violent, if you will, much less trivial, and you can really bring out values and interesting discussions. So, in my opinion, it's a bit of both. And indeed, there are very strong individualities. And this clearly leads perhaps to polarizations, which, however, are not necessary. I mean, I wouldn't have such a fatalistic view. Surely, in the right context, there can be an excellent dialogue.
Perfect. I'd like to ask you one last question about the depth of your generation before moving on. In your opinion, does your generation have a marked depth or, as we seem to sense, a slightly narrower vision, that is, a bit more superficial? Because the world is also what it is. I mean, it doesn't seem to give all this hope to young people, right? It's always a bit focused on what is bad news, rather than good news, and towards a catastrophic future, rather than towards a future of prosperity. So, today's kids lose hope and are more superficial, because they don't want to think about what could be a negative future as the media portrays it, or are they deep but afraid to show it?
In my opinion, maybe neither one nor the other, in the sense that we are a generation exactly like those that preceded us. And so there is a huge internal variety, but in a context that is actually new. And so all the various opposites really jump out. I mean, let's think, for example, of the environmental issue. We are the generation that in the newspapers is called the eco-anxiety one. That is, people so scared of global warming, of all these changes, that they almost don't leave the house. But we are also the generation that carried forward the idea of Fridays for Future, which you may or may not like, but in any case, it's still a youth movement that has spread all over the world. So, in my opinion, it's a bit of both. I'd even dare to say at the same time, I mean, people are scared, but precisely because they are scared, they try to do something. Clearly, not everyone then has the strength to do it. Others maybe let themselves go more. But in my opinion, it's always difficult in a world with so many problems, precisely narratives that are failing. To give a single answer to a question like that is really complicated, in my opinion.
Clear. And as a vision, how would you define your generation from the perspective of its vision for the future?
I think we have, we feel the responsibility, we feel the duty to improve some things, like, for example, the climate and environment issues I mentioned earlier. But also the relationship between men and women, there's a lot of focus on that. Then maybe the battles being fought are more or less agreeable. I don't want to argue about that. I mean, at the source, what is perceived as necessary? I think these are the battles that my generation has taken on and wants to fight. And then we'll see how they develop. But I think this is, it's visible, it's being discussed. In my view, it's mainly a matter of moving toward equality, meaning giving everyone the same rights, regardless of sexual orientation, gender, or ethnicity. I think this is something my generation feels strongly about. Always keeping in mind that, put this way, other viewpoints are left out, which aren't as enthusiastic about this stance. But in my opinion, this is something that we feel quite strongly.
I see. And regarding the more political side of wars? Of this divisiveness, of this, for example, right now, this battle between the West and the more Muslim part, if you will, in short, the Middle East. This whole big problem that's coming to light these days, right? Also this whole rush to rearm, something we haven't seen in a while. How might this be interpreted by your generation?
Well, it's certainly interpreted passively in the sense that since we're all too young for now, there's no one in the corridors of power to be able to manage these things. So they're actually experienced passively. You can protest if you don't agree, or you can agree and support it. But for now, we can't yet change things on an actual level. But on this matter, I think we mirror previous generations exactly, meaning there's a huge divide. Out of 10 of my friends, there are 10 completely different options, 10 different worldviews. And so maybe even more than before, precisely because there are fewer narratives, it's increasingly hard to find common ground, that's for sure. But precisely because for now, it's still hard to do something concrete that really shifts things. Maybe all the ideas my generation has haven't emerged yet. Maybe we'll have to wait a bit longer for that to happen.
I understand. In your journey, chess has played an important role, a very important one, I'd say, both as a competition and as a lesson. What has it taught you about our mind, about the human mind?
Well, so they've been a very important part. I played for 10 years, maybe more, and there's certainly I don't even know if I'd call it a sport, a discipline, very unique because it seems like a purely mental thing. But I guarantee that the physical stress you feel in hours and hours of a match really pushes you to the limit, both physically and mentally. And this, in my view, is very interesting because it really leads you in a way to know yourself, to understand what your limits are when you're tired, what mental mechanisms you use. I mean, it's not just finding the best move on the board, it's also about maintaining self-confidence when you miss a move, a position, when you make a calculation error. There are all these mental aspects that are certainly interesting. And the fact that there are two of you at that board also teaches you, for example, that you can plan, you can think as much as you want, but in the end, you always have to deal with the other person too. And this sometimes messes up your plans quite simply.
So let's say that even in chess, there's a lot of philosophy. I mean, there's a lot of psychology too, right?
Absolutely. Yes, 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 absolutely. Like in all these sports, in my opinion, where there are two athletes facing each other. Tennis comes to mind, for example, as well. Foster Wallace wrote a book called Tennis as a Mystic Experience, no, as a religious experience, I think, in which precisely this idea comes out a lot. I mean, it's you, your opponent, the ball, and nothing else. And this also leads you to find something about yourself, about how you relate to the world. It might seem like a very abstract, very metaphysical discussion, but when you're there for hours and hours managing the tension, managing the physical stress, the mental stress, anyway, something about yourself. In the end, you understand, and it definitely tells you something.
And of course, it's like a gym, an inner gym, if you will. You were the national under-8 chess champion, right? When you were younger than 8 years old, correct?
I was 8, yes, 7 or 8. Exactly.
So you were the Italian chess champion at 8 years old?
Yes, in my category, clearly. No, yes, it was a wonderful feeling because I had started playing a couple of years before. And so when there are these nationals, you compete against people your own age. And the under 8 is the category for the youngest children, so from 8 years old and down. And so it was a wonderful experience over 9 games. I had scored 7.5 points, I think. So 7 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. And this allowed me to then be champion, to represent Italy at the World Championship in Brazil. It was really a wonderful experience. In my opinion, it counts for a lot. At that age, practically only talent counts because you don't have time to structure much yet. So let's say how intuitive you are, plus how much you've had a good teacher who guided you on those 4 or 5 things, basics. As the game progresses, it becomes instead much more study, hours and hours of study. It becomes important to evaluate your strategy. It becomes important to know the opening, to know the end games, also a whole very important theoretical framework.
So practically at the beginning, it's just talent. But as you get stronger, you have to face people your own age, who, however, have a background of training, if you will, of practice and study of a certain level. then it becomes precisely the construction of strategy and thought, so also of understanding the other on a psychological level. What kind of move they might make, I imagine.
Well, yes, in the sense, then in reality, the best moves on the chessboard, those are it. And there are few players who play on the opponent's psychology, what in chess is called as if you were playing poker. I mean, you do a wrong move, hoping the opponent responds poorly. At a certain level, this generally isn't done anymore. But still, especially for the top players who in the end are those 20 and know each other, there's also a very strong mental game behind it. Playing an opening the opponent doesn't expect, making a move that maybe isn't the best and you know it, but it builds a situation where you know the opponent feels uneasy. This whole aspect exists and it's very strong. At the level I've reached, the mental aspect is mostly about match endurance, staying in the game. If it's going badly, not giving into fatigue, all these things are there. I think it's a game that brings together so many things for this very reason, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It's what made me fall in love with it.
Listen, from the perspective of mental development for the purpose of studying, how much can a child be helped by the game of chess?
In my opinion, a lot. I'm biased, clearly, but there's a bit of everything because there's the concentration part, there's the attention part, there's also the rote learning part. If you will, in learning the openings, it develops logic immensely. It's all logical mathematical thinking, which is why computers are unbeatable. But in my view, it also develops a certain artistic sense, a certain intuitive sense, and it works on multiple levels. Again, I'm biased, but for a child, it's an excellent tool, definitely.
A bit like music, let's say, in some way.
Yes, probably so.
Chess is often associated with calculation and logic, as you also told us just a moment ago. But in your opinion, at high levels, do intuition, style, imagination, and psychology also come into play? You've already touched on it previously, but maybe we can go a little deeper into this point.
Well, it's certainly calculation and logic in their purest form. I mean, in my opinion, what makes chess fascinating is also that it's a game that has existed for millennia. It has undergone the fewest variations in history, meaning the rules are identical, the moves have been identical for 2,000 years, with very few exceptions. The pawn moving, two squares, castling, those are the only differences that I'm aware of. I mean, if we think about modern sports, the rules have changed.
But this thing you're saying makes the game of chess even more fascinating to me. Because it's hard to understand how a game with such ancient rules is still so difficult to play.
Exactly, and I think it's because by reducing everything, it's a game where luck is reduced to zero, in my view. And it all really comes down to the player's computing power, clearly supported by study and awareness of the best moves, of what one should try to do. Without that part, one could even be a logic prodigy, but it's impossible to deduce certain things if you haven't studied them, if you don't know them. And then, as the level certainly increases, there are then real stylistic flourishes. I mean, it might seem strange in a game where you only have to look for the best move, but all the strongest players are distinguishable by their style. Like those who have a much more aggressive style, those who tend to open the position, those who tend to close it. These are all things that emerge. Since it's a mathematical game but played by humans, it's evident that even the strongest tend to sacrifice a little in terms of absolute perfection as a statistic, as the best move always found, to play in positions where they feel more comfortable, which are closer to their own sensibility.
Look, I know nothing at all about chess. I've never played chess in my life, but you're making me want to play. And I think many people who play, including some incredible people online, are influencers who've now also become passionate about chess. Maybe they'd like to ask you so many of those questions that I'm just not able to ask you. But who knows, maybe you'll answer the comments that will be left for this interview. Tell me something. Having experienced chess as a teacher too, do you think it can still be a useful school today to build focus, discipline, and decision-making skills? In younger people, but also in older ones, I'd say, right? Even if you're older, maybe you can still get into the discipline of chess.
Absolutely, yes. I think this is shared with almost any other sport at that level. I mean, I wouldn't say that chess teaches discipline more than classical dance or any Olympic sport or volleyball. I mean, they're all sports where to succeed, you have to be very disciplined, very focused. What's true is that Having fixed positions where every move is a fundamental decision, it certainly teaches you to evaluate your resources well, to analyze your position, and maybe think about it one more time. That, yes, definitely.
Good. And so also decision-making skills, because focus and discipline, that's for sure, right? But in terms of decision-making, how mechanical is the decision based on the move the other person makes? And how much instead depends a lot on you? How fundamental is the decision in the game?
It's 100% of the game, and I think it's a result of what kind of player you are, how much you've trained, how familiar you are with that position, how much you're able to calculate ahead to see what might happen. And so it also reflects a lot on the person, whether you want to take a risk or not, if you want to play a position where you risk everything, or if you want to wait for the opponent to make a mistake. I mean, there are all these components that greatly influence your decision-making process. Then clearly there are moves that are almost forced, but there are moments in the game, as enthusiasts know, where a strong player might think for 25 minutes because the best moves aren't that different from each other in terms of what they can offer, but they're different in terms of the position they create. And so there, it's up to you to evaluate which situation you'd rather be in.
I see. Truly fascinating, I must say.
Yeah.
In 1997, the world witnessed a historic symbolic transition. Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov, showing that a machine could surpass the human champion in one of the most emblematic areas of strategic intelligence. Since then, the relationship between chess and artificial intelligence has continued to evolve profoundly. How do you interpret that episode today, as a philosopher and a player, and what it represented?
Well, it really and truly completely changed the way we approach the game of chess, in the sense that before this shift happened, if you wanted to study chess seriously, you absolutely had to do it with someone who was stronger than you, first of all. It was just the way things were done back then. And then you had the awareness that no matter how good someone might be, except for some obvious situations, you didn't know what the best move on the board was because the mathematical competence, the logic to know it, was simply missing. The computer, on the other hand, allows you to input any position and it tells you the 3 best moves, analyzing everything that can happen so you're sure that the best move is actually that one. This changes the way you approach it. It changes the way you study the game. It changes the way you train, inevitably. Certainly, as for the more philosophical part, more of what it can tell us, there's a beautiful book called When We Cease to Understand the World by Benjamin Labatut, which talks exactly about this topic. That is, how man has been surpassed in aspects where he thought he was unbeatable, basically both in chess and in the game of Go, which is even more complex. And it was thought that computers would never be able to master. In my opinion, this says a lot in the sense that, if you will, it somewhat completes that whole process that is said about man. First, he lost his centrality in the universe. The Earth, from being central, became a tiny dot. In the universe, now he's not even strong anymore at a game he invented himself. I mean, this clearly humbles you. But on the other hand, in my opinion, it's also true that we watch human chess tournaments and very few watch chess tournaments between computers, which exist, but which we don't find so fascinating. It's more of a thing for insiders, precisely because evidently what interests us in the game isn't so much who wins, but probably how they do it. That is, what the mechanisms are, what the personal story behind it is.
So it's really very complex, also. It's the journey that matters more than the arrival, then, in the end. More than the destination.
Knowing that the computer made the best move because it already knows it tells me little. Seeing the world champion playing the final game and thinking 15 minutes on a move. That thing there leaves you much more impressed, by the way. It leaves you much more impressed since computers have been around. Because now you can watch the games of the strongest players with a computer by your side, knowing what they should do. Otherwise, at that level, you don't reach that interpretation. The computer helps you immerse yourself much more in the games of strong players. Clearly.
Crazy though, incredible, since chess engines have surpassed the human level. In your opinion, has the meaning of skill, study, and preparation also changed? And today, concretely, how do grandmasters interface with artificial intelligence? Do they see it as a support? An ally? A new standard? Or even as a presence that has radically transformed the way of training and also of analyzing games, as you just told us, in short? What I mean is, do masters study with artificial intelligence?
In the sense that with the computers that already exist, rather than artificial intelligence, I'd say. I mean, there are programs that they study with. When they review the games they've played, they always analyze them with a computer, as almost anyone does at any level. And I remember an interview with Carlsen, who is the strongest player in the world today by far, in which he said exactly this. That is, he says, I'm not interested in playing against the computer. I know it beats me anyway. I mean, it's not something I find that fascinating. By the way, Carlsen is one of the few who, with a slight advantage, I mean, I think from the starting position, he had an extra knight. He managed to win against the computer. But on equal terms, it's impossible. On equal terms, it's impossible. What I think is interesting is that they use it as a tool to compare themselves, to understand how they can still improve the game, to also analyze the opponent's game. This is absolutely done. This, yes.
So is artificial intelligence used or not in chess?
Artificial intelligence? Now, in my opinion, not so much. They mostly use these computer programs that analyze at a mathematical level. AI isn't needed.
So it's not an algorithm?
No, I think it's really just computing power. I mean, it analyzes all possible moves, and then it analyzes all possible moves up to a certain depth, clearly because it can't reach everywhere. And then it tells you what the best move is, the 2 or 3 best moves you can play at that moment.
I see, so there isn't...
In Go, for instance, on the other hand, a component of artificial intelligence was also required, because in Go, there are just too many moves for purely mathematical and logical reasoning. And so in that case, it was necessary to have the computer play billions of matches against others and against itself until it learned somewhat through intuition, if you will. And that is why the book by Labatut I mentioned earlier is so very interesting. I mean, if the computer truly had the intuition to make that move, which it didn't do just by calculation, but because it had seen similar positions so many times and realized that that specific one was the best option.
Truly interesting. What remains profoundly human about chess? Even when a machine can calculate better, faster, and more deeply than any human champion. And then, today, is it still possible to beat quote-unquote artificial intelligence or the program that is being used in some way? Also because I think that, if artificial intelligence is used for Go, it is likely possible to use it for chess as well, right?
Yes, no, definitely. And in my view, I remember reading somewhere that they had artificial intelligences play against each other. And by the way, I mean, ChatGPT is not even the best. It often gets beaten. It seems it often gets beaten by DeepSeek, but I am not entirely sure. Anyway, I know ChatGPT is not exactly a phenomenon. No. Well, today beating a well-trained system is simply impossible. I mean, all the strongest systems like Stockfish back in my day, or even others today, are unbeatable by humans with equal material, meaning starting from the classic position, it is impossible because it always plays the best move. So at most you get a draw, basically. Carlsen played a match in a world championship where he had 99.3% correct moves, meaning he played 99.3% of the time the best move according to the computer. Maybe that is enough for you to draw, but beating it is impossible. That is for sure. They can beat each other if one is less effective than the other over a huge number of matches. That is true, because maybe the system makes a mistake, does not calculate something deeply enough. The other has more depth, that yes. But for humans, it has become impossible, in my opinion, absolutely. But as I was saying before, this has not taken anything away from the game, in my opinion. I mean, we continue to watch the World Championships. Enthusiasts actually seem to be more and more precisely because it is the human behind it that interests us. Just as in my opinion, there is little interest in content created solely by AI. I mean, I do not know if anyone today would read a novel written only by AI, if not for the interest of seeing how it wrote it. In my opinion, we are still very interested in the human behind it. That is why a human wrote those things. Literature in the end is very much about this, in my opinion.
Yes, also because in any case, we continue to be interested in what humans do for humans, thank heaven. And let's hope we never lose this interest, because otherwise we're ruined, in my opinion.
Sure, absolutely.
Listen, do you think what happened in chess is a useful metaphor for understanding what's happening in many other fields as well? From intellectual work to creativity, in your view?
Well, yes, in the sense that it's clearly changed the whole world of chess. I mean, how you approach it, how you study, how you train, that's for sure. It's probably also improved the overall level in the sense that always knowing the best move allows you to improve your game. I don't know if this applies to all the areas where we're going to use artificial intelligence. But if we want to offer a note of hope, especially now when we're starting to hear about the first layoffs and such due to artificial intelligence, chess players are still there. It's true it's a game and not a job. That's true. But it's also true that interest in that world hasn't dropped just because humans aren't the best at it anymore. That's for sure.
Good. Do you believe that delegating more and more cognitive functions to smart tools risks weakening human judgment? Or do you think it could transform it into something new?
So the risk of weakening it is definitely there. And it's what people were already saying when they started creating the first digital memories. I mean, having an extended mind allows you to no longer have to memorize things. Simply put, before you knew the phone numbers of people you cared about by heart because otherwise you couldn't call, today we don't need that anymore. It seems that even the ability to find our way has worsened because with Google Maps, you don't need it anymore in 99% of the cases when you move. So this weakening is definitely there. We have to see if it's a weakening of things we won't need anymore. I mean, humans have already lost technologies over time. None of us, or almost none of us, knows how to light a fire with just those sticks anymore, but no one has ever missed this thing, probably, unless you're in a forest alone. But some things like critical judgment, like thinking for yourself and not just relying on the machine or whoever else, this stuff here is fundamental not to lose. And so maybe we'll need to understand what can be replaced without the risk of losing something on a mental level, and what instead we must keep ourselves because it's what characterizes us and what makes us human, if you will.
Clear. In your opinion, in this field, will self-driving cars make us gain or lose something?
Well, that's a great example. In the sense that it's clear you lose. I mean, if they're perfect and only those are used, it's clear that maybe in 100 years, maybe even in 50, people won't know how to drive anymore. But maybe it'll also be like lighting a fire in the woods. I mean, something that no one misses because accidents have been reduced to almost zero. Cars are much more efficient. There's much less risk in driving. Maybe fuel consumption is also optimized, for example. I mean, these are all things that in the end make you say, yes, it's true. You used to have fun driving, but maybe it's not even that bad. Maybe it will then become a hobby for a few to continue driving old cars. And instead, humanity will then move in another way.
Who knows? Maybe we'll have a car that won't be ours anymore, but we'll call it, like Uber. And the car will arrive and take us where we want to go all day, for a week. Who knows? It's all so much in flux.
Sure.
Where would you draw the line between a technology that helps human thought and a technology that instead risks replacing it or atrophying it?
It's always a bit like this, in my opinion, in the sense that we'll need to understand what we can lose because it wasn't so essential and didn't characterize us that much. I mean, for example, I think today, comparing all the flights, comparing all the various travel options, this thing here is something that AI does better now and probably won't make sense to keep. But instead, there are some things, knowing how to read a book on your own, knowing how to interpret it on your own, even understanding what the destination of the trip we want the AI to organize is, if you will, that stuff is important that we continue to do it ourselves, in my opinion. Or at least that we use artificial intelligence to stimulate ideas on that subject, not that we leave the choice completely to someone else. This, by the way, in my opinion, isn't just an AI topic, it's a general topic. I mean, it's that thing about not taking absolute reference models and accepting what they say just like that a priori, but instead always questioning things a bit, thinking about it.
If we want, this thing also makes me think about freedom, right? Because if we rely on third parties, even if they're people and not machines, we lose our freedom. Because then we'll be subject to their ideas, their conditions, and the advice they give us as a result, right? And it's the same thing with machines. If we were to rely completely on machines, we would lose our freedom too, in a certain sense.
Yes, of course, it's a bit like the argument. If we want to stay on purely philosophical ground that Nietzsche already made, when artificial intelligence didn't exist and neither did computers. That is, if the overman, the one who was truly meant to be the next step after human, even better, is the one who creates his own values, who is capable of setting aside society's values, questioning them, understanding if they're truly right or if we're wrong, and not accepting them a priori.
Of course, this also applies to machines, even more so. Because then we won't be able, if we keep going at this rate, to understand if it's the truth or not the truth, on top of everything else. If you had to point to one big philosophical question that will become increasingly fundamental in the coming years, what would it be?
Well, that's a good question. There probably won't be just one, but certainly linked to artificial intelligence. There's the whole discussion about what is human, what is consciousness, how does our mind work, and how artificial intelligence has made us understand certain things by making comparisons, and also by the fact that AI has learned from what we've given it. So whatever it does was ultimately our input, and this can tell us something about ourselves. And anyway, philosophy tends to often repropose the same questions, sometimes even obsessively, so I don't know if there'll be new questions. I mean, this question about consciousness is the same one that Plato was already asking. The point is to integrate it with new tools, so how these tools can help us investigate. For example, Descartes thought that man was like a machine. And in his various works, he explains the human mechanism as if it were a robot, or as he says, an automaton. Like pulling muscles was like pulling strings, he says, for example, because what he had in mind were the first machines. Watson, Skinner, behaviorism, the brain as a computer, because at the time it was the great development of Silicon Valley. And so the model they had in mind was that today our model is artificial intelligence. So we have to understand what it can teach us about ourselves.
It's truly an era of great upheaval, which scares us a bit. But it's also really very stimulating, isn't it? All this moving towards something that could truly make us superhumans, and let's hope it really does. Looking to the future, do you feel more cautious, critical, confident, or pragmatic regarding the relationship between artificial intelligence, technologies, and society?
Well, hoping to always be pragmatic, but today I think it's really very difficult to say. Also because it acts on several levels. That is, for example, on an economic level. Maybe it's hard to be confident because, according to some, a very large speculative bubble is forming. It's not certain, and we're not sure we can repay those investments. This could then cause problems for the economy in general, for example. There's the level of job loss of expertise, as we were saying before. It's just hard to give a single answer to this thing here. But in my opinion, we must start from the assumption that this technology is here now and there's no going back. And so we also need to understand how to develop it, how to structure it, and how to use it at its best. From this point of view here, I am confident. Of course, if it were to be used only by some and thus creating a large rift between the various classes of society, even more than what already exists, that can hardly leave you confident. If instead it's a great process of democratization, as others claim, clearly that makes you think of a purely positive tool. Probably the answer will lie in the middle, but saying it today is very difficult. Which is also interesting which often happens with great technologies. That is, if it's right that they remain the property of those who have the intellectual property. It's a discussion that was had, for example, also about vaccines. If it's right that they remain and therefore cost more, there are all sorts of ethical problems, these if we want, right?
Sure. So, in your opinion, should they be public? In the sense, shouldn't they be private? Should they be the prerogative of the state? State-owned?
State-owned, I don't know. State-owned, I don't know. The point is that perhaps everyone should have the possibility of not being cut out from such an important tool. That is, as long as it exists, I say this on a practical level for everyone. That is, for the people in the broadest sense, for common people. If you are cut out from such a tool, it's clear that you will lose something compared to others.
Clear.
And so having access to a platform. But in my opinion, the internet has shown this several times. When there is such a technology, it's difficult for it to remain the prerogative of a few at a certain level. What's going to be important, I mean, in the sense that right now a subscription to ChatGPT doesn't cost so much that it cuts off a part of the population. Or those being left out likely already had more severe economic issues, a deeper state of hardship that isn't just caused by artificial intelligence. Maybe it'll make it harder for them to close the gap, that's for sure. Then there's the whole discussion about artificial intelligence at a higher level, like how it will be used at a state or military level. These are things that are hard to know today, just how far they've come in their research.
Let's say that even at an industrial and economic level, artificial intelligence is being used now by some companies that focus on it. And they no longer need many intellectual roles, and so they're cutting out the humans. And this will help us understand where we're headed and what the future will be for those people who lose their jobs. But we'll have a chance to delve deeper into the topic because it's a rather thorny subject and not so easy to deal with. As you were telling me, there's no black and white. I mean, we're still in largely uncharted territory, so we need to figure out how to proceed, and we don't know what those 5 or 6 people who truly hold absolute power over artificial intelligence have in mind. And we need to understand it. How do you relate to Lyria? I mean, with me, as I'm the protagonist of Lyria, The Way of the Paradox, by Estrella Nicodemo.
Well, clearly, in my opinion, the beautiful thing I think about the whole book is that it's structured just like a fairy tale, like a fable. And so it's easy to identify with the protagonist, Lyria. And clearly, Lyria is what you hope artificial intelligence will be. So it's clear that it's the kind of what we all hope artificial intelligence turns out to be, which is a system of democratization, a system of social justice, if you will. So it's clear that it's a fundamentally positive relationship. It's really nice to see how a character like that gradually develops and grows, just as, well, we hope that certain platforms also continue to develop and evolve, with a thoughtful focus on humans, with a genuine focus on the environment, the Earth itself, if you will, and that's certainly important.
Good. Listen, Lorenzo, it's been a real pleasure having you here, talking to you, getting to know you better, and it'll be a pleasure to read your articles, starting with the first one, which is about cognitive biases in artificial intelligence. And I invite you all to read it because it's truly exceptional. You can find it on our blog, FutureScape. We'll also make a video to post on YouTube to explain what Lorenzo wanted to reveal to us, to open our minds, to show us mental processes that we aren't even aware of, but that actually...
They're well known to insiders.
Exactly. We never think about it, but in reality it's true that they influence practically every one of our daily behaviors. And it was truly a discovery for me too, reading your article. So, congratulations really, and thanks again.
Thanks everyone.
Bye Lorenzo, see you soon. If you enjoyed our chat, let us know with a like. Your opinion is very important and helps us improve. See you soon.